Hello, Anna, and everyone out there. My name is Paul, I'm 55, and I'm a self-employed property manager. I've seen a number of these videos on YouTube now and just wanted to share my thoughts as I'm becoming increasingly uneasy and disturbed by the whole way in which this thing seems to be moving. When the lockdown first happened towards the end of March, I thought at the time it seemed like a real over-the-top response by the government. Medical experts repeatedly told us that in the vast majority of cases, people who contracted it would only have mild symptoms. Obviously, there were those more at-risk categories, the elderly, those with pre-existing illnesses, but for most people, it would really be no worse than a dose of the normal flu. So for the decision to be made to pretty much shut down the whole country just seemed like an extreme reaction on the part of the government, and it did make me think, is there something else going on here? Is there some agenda here that we're not being told of? Is there some other underlying motivation that's driving this decision-making process? Is the whole thing a massive Trojan horse that the government will use to bring in restrictions to our freedom and liberties in a way that they would never be able to do under normal circumstances? A lot of people are saying the whole thing is planned. I don't know whether it is or not, but one thing that does seem very clear is that if it hasn't been planned, then certainly governments around the world are certainly taking advantage of the opportunity that is given to them to bring in legislation and restrictions on our freedom of movement that we've never seen before. It's a completely unprecedented situation out in a liberal democracy. Even during wartime, people's ability to move about and congregate was never as restricted as it is now. Another disturbing aspect of the whole thing has been the way in which it's created a climate of fear, suspicion, paranoia, wariness. Now when people walk down the street, they step out of the way to avoid each other. The idea of just having a brief chat with somebody in the queue at the supermarket seems to have gone out the window. There is a real sense of mistrust amongst people, and it feels like the bonds of trust that used to help to hold society together are being broken down, and I think that's really quite a sad reflection on the way that people have responded to this. 6 months ago, somebody wearing a face mask in public would have been seen at best as being a bit strange, and at worst people would think they're up to no good. Whereas that whole logic has now been turned on its head, and if you go into places without wearing a face mask, people are now looking at you in a very disapproving sort of way, muttering under their breath that you're not wearing a face covering, or in some cases, as we've seen on some YouTube videos, acting in a very aggressive way towards people who are not wearing a face covering. The science of face coverings is pretty shaky at best. I don't actually think they make any difference at all. I don't think they would help to prevent anything. They give people a false sense of security, but really they're ineffective. I've never been one for conspiracy theories, but I do find it quite interesting now to note that people like David Icke and Alex Jones, who for years have talked about these kind of situations arising, have now been banned from all social media platforms. So it does seem as though it's an attempt to silence these kind of warning voices or dissenting voices. And that, again, could be coincidental, but it could be part of a bigger picture. And it does seem slightly disturbing that the people are being censored in their speech. I have real concerns that what we're seeing now is maybe just the first few steps on a pathway that's going to send us down towards a much more authoritarian kind of society, where our freedoms are much more restricted than we've ever known in the past. So I think it is important that people speak out as much as possible and really register that they are not happy with this situation that is arising, because I fear that things are going to get worse. I think the world that we knew as little as 6 months ago, I think it's possibly gone forever. We may never see that again, and that's a terrible tragedy. Anyway, I'll keep this to within 6 minutes, so thank you for your time.